Welcome everyone. Yeah, I see a few some familiar face here, some new face here. I would like to kindly ask everyone to change your name on Zoom, following the name and the country that you are living now. So welcome everyone. Was really glad and excited to see some familiar face and some new face here come from a lot of place of destinations around the world. And this is our third workshop in this workshop series called From Local to Global Dialogues on Restorative Practice in Education. So this workshop series, we are try to focus on connecting people from around the world, mostly in Vietnam, but it's really honor and it's wonderful to have friends from around the world to join us and further to connect everyone, educators, practitioners. We hope that we can together promote the restorative justice principle and practice in our school, in our communities. So my name is Linh, and I'm from the Classroom Circle in Vietnam. And today is the third workshop called Whole School Approach to Restorative Justice, and with the SEL and TIP integrations. So in these sessions, we are, I think we are even working the school and from even in the different countries. To include the psychologist or the school counselor in the school is quite popular and become a familiar practice in the school right now. But in these sessions, we invite Miss Margaret, who is also the school counselor for many years and now a director of the Restorative Justice Center in Australia and a co-chair of some center to work on the restorative justice to see in a different perspective that how we can using restorative as the holistic way to not only address or support the student on the personal trauma, but to building the school environment and the learning and teaching environment on support our student and teacher. So before I handle the talking piece to the Margaret, I would like to invite Phước to give everyone a few a few introductions about how our Zoom translate functions and support you in our meeting today.
Thank you, Ling, for passing the talking piece. And hello, everybody. I hope you guys have a great time in whatever time zone that you are in right now. So I'm going to give out a few instructions regarding of the captions in this webinar. So in the toolbar at the down at the in your screen, you can find a caption tool, and you can change the caption to show the translation. So the speaking language is the language that's going to be used in this workshop. So it's going to be English, and the caption language is going to be your language. And I'm also going to be here for special assistant. If anybody needed, just please text me in Zoom and I would be gladly of help. Thank you so much, and I'm going to pass it back to the circle.
Okay, thank you for so she will be paid our instructions in the chat box. Or you can open the email that we already sent to you before our sessions. So yeah, don't let everyone wait for too long. I will handle the talking piece to our guest speaker and our facilitator today, Ms. Margaret.
Well, thank you very much. So I'll just say a few words before I share the screen. I am so happy to be with you tonight, although it is clearly nearly my bedtime. So I'm going to prop my eyes open with matchsticks to make sure that I don't snooze off during the evening. I have sent through a number of documents to Lynn, which I think you will have already forwarded to everyone. Well, I hope so anyway. So tonight we don't have a great deal of time to talk about how do we make a whole school restorative, but I can tell you that it is my life's work actually to help a school change the way it does discipline with young people, and also to help them be the best versions of themselves. That's absolutely possible. So I will share my screen and just get going. We will very soon just put you into a chat room to connect with each other and also do a bit of a check-in. So I'll share my screen now, and here we go. Of course, it's right down the bottom where I thought it shouldn't be. So I'll just pop everyone up here. So we'll start the ball rolling by me telling you just a little bit more about me. So I have lived in Australia my whole life. My mother, I was just speaking to Lynn a little before, my mother migrated with her family from Germany many years and years ago, but I actually, on my father's side, there was a convict, a prisoner sent out from England, and he was sent to Tasmania for breaking the law in England. So I have interesting ancestry. But where I live is on the east coast of Australia. Now it's just north of the capital, Brisbane, and we call our place the Sunshine Coast. So it's a very beautiful stretch that has, here you can see in the photo, these are old volcanic plugs, which are, you know, obviously this was a volcanic region many millions of years ago, but all that is left now is just these lovely mountains that people like to climb. I also live quite near the beach, so this is a view of one of the beaches where I like to go if I want to have a swim or do a bit of sunbaking, which of course is not very good for my skin. But where I live, right in amongst other houses, we also have a lot of kangaroos that come into our little street and just eat the grass on our footpaths, and it's just lovely. We just absolutely love the kangaroos. They're not pets. We don't feed them, but they're quite tame and obviously feel very safe, which makes me happy. But there's also other wildlife at my house, and this is my lovely husband, Michael, who, like me, was a school teacher and then a student counsellor, and now he works for me as office manager, and also takes care of the house because I'm away a lot. I'm sort of a fly-in, fly-out wife. We have 2 cats, and Lynn met one of them online yesterday. We also have two boys. Will, who's in the white t-shirt here, is 38 and Tom is 34. They're very, very good mates, and both their wives are currently pregnant. So we are about to become grandparents. The first one is due at Christmas, 25th of December, and the next one is due at the end of March. So we're pretty excited about that, and I think I'm going to love being a grandmother. So in a minute, I'm going to ask Lynn and Locke to put you into breakout rooms, but I just want to talk about what I want you to do, and that is to introduce yourselves to each other pretty quickly. Just tell them, you know, where you're from and what you do and what your interest is in restorative practice. But I also want you to let the others in your room know how you are right now, because for me, it's the end of quite a long day. Some of you are starting the day. Some of you may just have got home from work. Some of you may still be at work. So what I'd like to do is just give you a picture here of sheep, and then you have to figure out which photo suits the way you feel right now and share that with your colleagues in your screen. So I'm going to stop the share, and hope that we can somehow put that photo into the chat box so that you can probably see. Anyway, if you can't see it, just let your colleagues know how you are, what shape you are in, how much of your brain is available for what we have tonight. So if we can pop them into breakout rooms now, that would be lovely. Thank you. And I'll see you again shortly. But we also need to know, before you leave the full screen, what is your big question about how to get a whole school approach to restorative practice? How do you make that happen? There you go. So folks, I have to tell you, this is me. This is my happy place, which is always when I'm talking about restorative practice in schools. But one really important thing, and I'll move on to the next slide, is that we have, with all our years of working with schools, it's always been very, very important for the school community and the leadership team to understand what a long journey it is to turn everyone around to this approach to problem solving. So we're really emphasizing that using the restorative process is not something we do when we feel like it. It's really about how we are with each other and with kids. So we're really on about changing the whole mindset and skill set of every adult in the school community, which will eventually help change the way parents think and the way young children think. So some schools will find it easier than others to do this work, and it depends on how willing they are to try new ideas. I know that Lynn, at the very beginning of our session tonight, talked about the need for social emotional learning and also the need for trauma-informed work. But I think one of the important things to realise is that we have to be able to help a school integrate all of these different initiatives so they all make sense. So in fact, these days, I don't think we can do restorative practice without using trauma-informed work. I don't think we can try and introduce ideas about well-being without changing the way we do discipline with schools. So it just is really important that the people who lead the change process are able to actually communicate the links between these different initiatives and why restorative practice is going to help. The next thing that will be very important is whether or not all the teachers and teacher assistants and anyone else who works in a school is willing to rethink their relationships with young people. And the other thing that really matters is whether or not you get a decent percentage of people who want to engage in this new, but actually it's very old way of doing business. So some friends of mine, these people down the bottom of the screen here, have done a little work about helping a school find out how ready it is. So in the top half of that slide, a school is ready for restorative practice if relationships really matter. A school is ready if there's a strong trust between leadership and teachers. And the last bit is whether or not leadership and staff communicate effectively and make decisions collaboratively rather than too many top-down decisions. And in the same vein, we would say a school is not ready if the leadership is too authoritarian, that there is high levels of conflict between staff, because really that has to be fixed before you even begin to do restorative practice. Whether or not there is a history of trauma or complaints within the school that haven't been resolved, or that your leadership team doesn't believe in restorative practice. So all of that will make a difference. And the other thing is sort of the really, really big picture stuff about restorative is that over the 30 years that restorative justice in schools has been developing, we started here at the very, I call it pointy end, but these are the serious things that children and adolescents do, which might result in a suspension or an exclusion. But actually, that sort of work is limited to quite quite a small number of students and adults. And so over these 30 years, teachers in all sorts of schools in many different countries have found how to embed the principles that we use for serious matters, for less serious matters, and basically for very minor daily happenings around the small things that kids do. So we're great believers in keeping the small things small. But the training across this continuum needs to be, different depending on your job. So we have a triangle. Some of you who might be calling in from the United States or Australia or other places that use a multi-tiered support system here will know that the bulk of really good preventative work happens before anything goes wrong, where we work really hard to build relationships between teachers and parents and students, and between the students themselves. So this green area here would be for all staff to be trained in. The yellow area is for slightly more complicated matters. So these would be in an elementary school, the team leaders. In a high school, it might be house leaders, or in Australia, we call them year level heads or heads of house. And in some schools, I've heard the position to be called a dean of students. So there might be a dean for year 9, a dean for year 10, etc. And then, of course, there are always kids in schools that have very complex backgrounds, very complex special needs. And then, of course, there's going to be a need for intensive intervention, which is still possible in a kind of team approach for schools. Now, I've put this next slide in to put some detail, but I don't want to spend time going over that at this point, except everyone has to be able to do this stuff. And I know that you've, or some of you at least, have come to the webinars with Nancy Riestenberg from America, who's a very close friend of mine. We've known each other for a long time, and she's particularly good around developing systems of circles to be used in classrooms. But I do also want to talk about in a little more detail the kind of skills that we need to be able to use in that green area of the triangle. So how well do we know our students? How good are we at creating a sense of safety and support and belonging? Now, we have this new word in many Western schools called relational pedagogy, and it basically means, how do we teach in a way that really engages children in classrooms. We're interested to try and reduce the number of punishments and rewards that we use. So trying to get children to motivate themselves. That's called self-directed. And it's very important in the green area of the triangle that we know how to settle a child who is not calm. So we call that, how do we help a student regulate? And sometimes we need to be able to do that with a whole class that's overexcited or has too much conflict or, has come in after a break and something's gone wrong. But what it does mean is that every adult knows how to stay calm, because we cannot do this work unless we first are calm, because calm is contagious. And then the other thing that's really, really important is, how do we keep the small things small? How do we resolve low-level conflict restoratively? Because I can tell you, we are not born with any of these skills. This is something that we must develop if we're going to hope to have a relational and restorative school that is interested in well-being of the adults and students, and is also interested in meeting the needs of kids that have very special and complex needs, but also understand the impact of stress and how it impacts on the human brain. Now, one of the mistakes I made when I started out was to believe that my job was to convince everyone all at once about why we needed to use restorative approaches. And it was very stressful and very, very distressing and very heartbreaking, actually. So I was very pleased to find out that not everyone is interested as quickly as I was. So I thought my job was to convince these people here that they should change their minds, but I learnt very quickly to work largely with these people here. So innovators, of course, are always interested in something new, and sometimes if your school principal or head teacher in your school is an innovator, it can be very exhausting, because we can suffer from something called innovation fatigue. But if you're thinking about trying to influence a school to take up restorative practice, what we have to do is find these people here who are called early adopters. Now, early adopters are always interested in best practice. So they are keen to learn, and they are usually highly respected by these people who think these ideas are good, but they aren't as brave as these people are. So it's important that if you're thinking about moving ahead with restorative practice, you ask around and you look and you find out from everyone else who's a really good teacher, who's really good interested in kids, who has great relationships with kids and parents and their colleagues. And these might be the ones who can help you the best. And these will influence this group, because this group watches what they're doing. Now, this group here, the late majority, they are a significant number of people, and mostly what they really try to do is not attract too much attention, and they hope it will all go away. But eventually, in a school that becomes very serious about implementing restorative practice, these folk generally will come to the will join in the culture when it's written into policy and practice. The laggards, however, really are very caught in the past, and they may be difficult to move, and sometimes they may become a performance issue, or else they might want to leave the school because it's no longer the place it used to be. So my advice is here to work with this group, because they will influence these, and eventually they will influence those, and they may or may not influence laggards, but you know, don't waste your time down that end first. So if we move on to look at one way of thinking about the job, and there is a model that you can look up on Google called the ADKAR model of change, and each of those letters means something. So A stands for awareness, and actually what we mean by that is understanding very clearly about why we need to do things differently. So what's the need for change, and are people helped to understand that we can't keep doing what we've always done in the past. So with any luck, then we can move people to the point where they want to change. Then we teach them how to change, and we help them develop skills and to change their behavior, and we give them lots of positive reinforcement. So in fact, this is really just the same way that we help kids change their own behavior when it's not helpful. So that's one model to look at. And here's another one, which we wrote about in a particular book about implementing restorative practice. That was we published that about 11 years ago, but nothing really has changed. And the first step here is to understand why we need to do it. And that's a really important step for leadership. So you might be the person in your school that really understands the need for change. So you have to do a great deal of reading and create a kind of a network of people within your school who believe in the need to change and who are happy to lead. But it's really, more importantly than anything, I think, is convincing leadership, and then creating this group of people who I would call an implementation team to, you know, help take the first steps. I will come back to what about the vision and values around here, but again, what I've also mentioned already is the business about being able to connect all those initiatives together. Oh, I've gone too far. And this is where actually you start to talk about it a lot in the staff room, in the parking area at the school, wherever you gather, and start to find out those people who are early adopters and ask them if they would like to be part of the first experiment. And the other piece about this is that the leadership team has to be able to give permission for these people to experiment. So whatever you want to try, you should be allowed to have a go to find out whether it works in your school or it doesn't. But when you do, I call it playing in the puddle, but when you do experiment, it's really important that there's an opportunity to be talking about how successful your experiments have been, but also to talk about what hasn't worked and why it hasn't worked and what can change. Now, this story here will take years. So if you're working in a large high school, I don't know how big your schools are, but if it's a large high school that maybe starts in Australia, our high school starts in year 7, goes through to year 12. In New Zealand, the high school starts in year 9 and goes through to year 13. But I would say that to bring about this change, we are looking at 7 to 12. That's 5 to 6 years worth of hard work to change the minds and skill sets of everyone in the school. And if you work in a school, you know that every year you have a new bunch of students and a new bunch of teachers, and sometimes even a change in leadership, which can really upset progress if you don't get the right kind of leader, actually. So I want to talk a little bit about what's involved here. And this is a diagram that a colleague and I created in the book that we wrote in 2013 that says that the centre of everything a restorative school does has to be driven by its values and its vision for creating a school where relationships really matter more than anything, that they are as important as the curriculum. Because we all know that a great teacher has wonderful relationships with kids and absolutely loves children and believes in them and knows what a positive influence that they will have on the lives of these young people to grow up into decent human beings. But the thing is, if you haven't already figured it out, that changing hearts and minds is no easy job. So if we look at the stuff here in the top part of the diagram, we talk about the execution of the vision and values. That is, how do we make the vision and values happen? Well, we have to write new policies and procedures. We have to have a year-by-year strategy because you can't change everyone within 12 months. It has to be done year after year in a logical manner. And so there's going to have to be a team of people who are happy to write, rewrite, review policies and procedures, that are happy to experiment, to put systems and processes in place and to keep up the professional development. I always think about this implementation of restorative practice as getting married. So the early part, there's lots of preparation for the wedding. There's guests to be invited. There are gifts to be bought, food to be made. But after all that is finished, it's just hard work to, earn money to pay the rent or buy a house, to put food on the table, to keep your relationship with your husband or wife working and happy. It's really hard to raise children, so it's all hard work, as well as the wonderful joy of living in community and living in family. So I've been to schools and seen their policy and seen their strategy and seen their systems, but they're not remotely relational. So it's been the work of a small group of people that haven't managed to influence and change the behaviour of others. So when we're talking about influencing the thinking and willingness to change, you have to look deeply about what the relationships are already like and what the connections are already like across your school community. Now, we send our children to a particular school because we like the sound of it. We like the school, we like the way it looks, we like the teachers there, we like their values. So it's really important that who the school believes it to be is very much tied up here with the vision and values. And the other thing that is going to make a huge difference is how well the leadership in the school and the implementation team communicate around the changes that are expected of everyone, so that everyone, that life is as predictable as possible. So with the last couple of slides, I'm hoping I've convinced you that the job is not an easy one, for sure, but it's an important one, and it's worthwhile sticking with it to see it through. So I've also seen schools where they've done beautiful change of culture work in the school, and then they've hired a new school principal who doesn't believe in the same things, and it's just been destroyed in about 18 months, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. I want to, and you don't have this slide. Oh no, I don't have it either. Where have I put it? Let's go back. If I just go back one slide here, there are a number of books which I think, Lynn, I might have not sent through the list or sent through a photo of the book covers, but I can do that after this. And I would just like to leave you with my contact details. I am on Facebook, I am on LinkedIn, and I am on Twitter. And I'm very, very happy if people would like to email me. And even if you are not very good at English, we can solve that problem with a little bit of Google translation. So I thought we might, depending on the time, Lynn, what would you like to do next? Would people like to ask me some questions or put questions in the chat room?
Yeah, thank you, Margaret, for sharing your insight and keep time perfectly during your presentations. I remember that we just talked yesterday about the process. The process on it takes years to make change in our school and within our even our classroom. And when we like know about the restorative justice or we want to apply and using it in the school, it's don't need to like change everything to come back at the first point, but how to like rethink of the way we deliver it, how we can rethink of how we can struggle it with everyone, with the teacher and with the principal, the teachers, and everyone in our school. So yeah, it's a complex process, and I hope that this is a basic idea for our like discussions right after this. This is a Q&A and discussion sessions. So if anyone like have a questions at in the breakout room at the first check-in, when we came here and we sharing with each others, if this already solved, if you still have the questions or further follow-up questions, this is our time to sharing, talking about this and pop up in this Q&A session. So I will post the talking piece in the middle of our room here. So please feel free to unmute yourself, or you can text it in the chat box and we can support if you have the challenge on sharing the questions.
I guess the one thing that's important to know about this work is that the work itself is beautiful. There is nothing I love more than bringing people together who are in conflict or in trouble and helping them get over it, to help them work out a way forward. And I can't think of anything I like doing better than helping put people out of their pain. So it is very special work. And it just gets me out of bed every morning. So Lynn, oh yes, oh thank you, that's lovely. There was a little heart there. So I think that most of us, if we work in education, love children. And we even sometimes love adolescent children, although they can be very frustrating, I think, from time to time. But I suppose what I would like to impress on you is that the old ways of doing business with discipline in schools is like the old way of dealing with snake bite. So in the old days, well, I'm not sure about Vietnam, but certainly in Australia and most other places that have snakes, is that we would, if someone was bitten by a snake, we would try to suck the venom out of the bite. Right? Now, medicine and science has shown us that that doesn't really work. So these days, when someone is bitten by a snake in Australia, aside from trying to get them to hospital as quickly as possible if the snake was poisonous, is to bind the limb and to keep the person as still as possible. So the science has changed things. And for me, because I used to teach biology, the thing that makes me happy these days about restorative practice is that it seems to work the way our brains work. So the neuroscience of brain development and how to change behavior is well supported with restorative ways of problem solving. So that's what excites me so much these days, that like I know that when a young person is very upset and having a meltdown or is incredibly dysregulated, their cortex, the bit behind their forehead, is not capable of thought. So that it's our job to calm them down before we can even have or hope to have a conversation with them. So I don't know how many of you have read, and I'll put his name in the chat box, Bruce Perry. He is a very famous neuroscientist. Okay, I just saw another question there. He's a very famous neuroscientist that even if, like, if you have your own children or you're working with children in schools, that the first thing that you must be clear that you have to do is stay calm yourself so that you can help the child be calm. So his rules are regulate first, and then say something kind to the child so that it is building the relationship, and then you can try to start to problem solve. Okay.
I
So,
think that
yeah, go on.
I think that before I saw a couple of questions, yeah, in our chat box, and I think would like to follow up, have a follow up sharing of questions about that. The normally in Vietnam, which I have experience with, maybe not for everyone or every school counselor, but most of the work related to support a student in the school to cope with like emotion challenge or some kind of vulnerable or conflict in the school. Mostly is they address it in the individual level. So how do you see, or like the you have like a feel of connections between the how we can using this like social emotional learning and is relevant to how we implement the restorative justice in some school?
Well, there are two things about that. First of all, through the curriculum that is being taught, and I don't know what subject it would be taught in, but I think it is absolutely critical to teach small children and older children how their brains work. And that's where, once you start to help kids to understand how their brainstem works, how their midbrain works, how their limbic brain works, and how their cortex works, then it makes sense to be able to talk about feelings and social and emotional language, for kids to be able to express themselves and tell someone how they feel, but social emotional learning is also about teaching kids how to resolve conflict. So it's not just about me and my feelings, but it's about how do I manage my relationship with someone else. So these are the skills that I talked about at the green part of the triangle, you know, the bit at the bottom, the preventative piece. So it would be up to the implementation team, or the people who are driving the change in the school, to help teachers understand you can't do restorative practice without teaching social and emotional skills, without teaching kids about their brains, without teaching kids how to resolve conflict. So you can't do restorative practice over there. It doesn't stand alone. It needs to be built into everything, even into maths lessons or language lessons or performing arts or art. There is, every opportunity to get kids to learn about what's going on inside their own bodies and inside their own heads. That I am absolutely convinced that's necessary. Now, when we talk about, if I can go back to one question here, how to apply the restorative circle in reducing risky behaviours of students like dropping out and if violence and drugs and so on. Look, I often think that's related to a background of chaos and complex needs. So if you're going to try to implement restorative practice in your school, you also have to understand the impact of trauma on kids' behaviour. So using any kind of restorative process, whether it's for serious matters or for minor matters, provided it's done well, is going to help lessen the likelihood of repeat behaviours. But once off, one only restorative conversation or one restorative circle may not be enough if the needs of the child are too complex. But we come together in circle to help support a child to get along better with others, or even, to manage their own impulses. It's a long story. It takes ages, and I know certainly I know that in some states of America, the cane, well, the paddle actually is still used as punishment. In Singapore, I know that some schools still use the cane, and if the thing that the kid has done is very serious, sometimes that caning is public. And that shocks me, because that sort of punishment cannot teach a kid a skill that doesn't yet exist in that child. So our discipline has to educate kids so that they can be better. Not just obedient. It's about being a good human being. But my early work in Australian and in New Zealand schools was always around extreme cases of violence, or kids bringing drugs to school, or truancy, or being rude to teachers, or being in conflict with each other. And it's so much worse now with iPhones and iPads, with the way kids are mean to each other online. So how to work.
I think can I suggest that we follow up with the questions of the friends who are here today about the questions that about the questions the participants sent pre workshop. I will send back to you, and we can like share with each other after the sessions. I saw the questions come from friend Indonesia. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. Warid Malam. If you feel free to like want to open your mind to have that questions.
Yeah, so this one's about how do social, is this the one you're talking about, Lynn?
Yeah, the questions about how to teach social emotional learning or awareness to high school students. Yeah, and she
Yeah.
asked simple case share reflections. Okay.
Yeah.
If I wonder if she wants to like sharing.
Yeah, how to teach social emotional learning or awareness to high school students, a simple case or self-reflection? Both, I think. My experience of either little kids or big kids, they are fascinated by their own brains. So there's I'll put her name in the chat here. And you can find her by Googling her. She's an assistant professor at a university in the USA, Butler University, I think it's called. But she is developing some online resources, and the website is, oh my God, it's just gone out of my head. No, I have to spell it properly. Revelations in education.com. And she has Revelations in Education. She has some extraordinary resources that she's developing to teach kids about their brains. This is simply the best thing that has ever happened in this whole patch of restorative practice or social emotional learning or trauma, that we now have access to this scientific information. And I think, well, I'm interested in my own brain, to tell you the truth. Sometimes it's a mess, but it helps me understand myself if I know how various bits of my brain work. So my own social and emotional development, even though I'm quite elderly now, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm very old. But I am I think, only just getting to know who I really am. And if we can help kids do that when they're younger, then they're going to be able to manage themselves in their relationships with others. So, Lynn, is there anything else here that I need? So, yes, there would be, you could, in a classroom, if you wanted to take a case study about a child or about two kids that were in conflict with each other, and if you knew a little bit about brains, you could get the class to think about what might be going on in the brain of one of the people who's in conflict, and then in the brain of the other person, and then we can figure out how can we help them solve the problem. So social emotional learning is really about self-awareness and other awareness, and how to manage our relationships with each other, as well as how do I manage myself so that I'm rational when I need to be rational, rather than completely out of control. Right. Lynn, what else do you think?
We have time for the questions, one more questions, and then the other, I think we'll have time to answer or share your insight after our workshop. I would like to pop up the questions from a friend who she have to leave right. Yeah, from David. She asked about like two questions. One is, how do social and emotional learning and trauma-informed practice elements mutually reinforce each other in fostering an RJE, which means Restorative Justice in Education? And the second one is, how can schools effectively tailor restorative justice frameworks to accommodate diverse cultures, contexts, and varying levels of readiness among stakeholders, particularly in under-resourced schools? So I think it's a good questions.
Yeah, that one's a big one. So the link between SEL and trauma informed and restorative. Now, if I had another hand, I'd put it here too, that in a school where there is old-fashioned ways of solving problems, that is the use of punishment. Now, sometimes corporal punishment with the cane or the paddle, but other times I don't know what you use in Vietnam. Would it be detentions or suspensions? Are they common, Lynn, in terms of responses to wrongdoing? What's common? What do you do in your schools when kids do the wrong thing?
Like,
What?
Yeah, I don't specific want to say in Vietnam because yeah, in my positions, I'm not a formal teacher in the formal school. Yeah, but really in like in some context, we still use like the discipline, cognitive discipline, just much focus, mostly is to punish student with the mentally, yeah, like not like push them out of this classroom
Yeah.
or like separate them with the group when we are in during the sessions or learning sessions in the classroom. So that
So
is
they're put out of the classroom.
yeah.
Yeah.
Another one of them.
So the question that we need to ask ourselves is, do we want children just to be obedient, or do we want them to learn the skills that are needed to manage themselves and manage their relationships with others, and to realize, well, I think there are five big skills. One, that we need to teach kids about empathy. Secondly, we need to teach kids that their behaviour impacts on others. We need to teach kids how to manage conflict. We need to teach kids about different perspectives or different points of view about the world. And we also need to make it very safe for our young people to be honest about what they've done, which was wrong, or what they didn't do, which was also wrong. But the point that I have been making in the last week, when I've been doing a lot of work with schools here locally, just down the road from where I live, is that none of us are prepared to be honest unless we feel safe. So it's our job, I think, in helping young people develop the capacity for honesty, but we have to create the conditions where they know they're not going to be dealt with harshly. So sending a kid out of the room might be necessary in the moment, but it doesn't teach them what to do instead. So there's a difference between crisis management, that is, we've got to keep everyone safe, or we have to get rid of this kid out of the room because they're making such a disturbance. There's a difference between crisis management and behaviour development. So what we talk about here in Australia and in New Zealand is not behaviour management, but behaviour development. So the whole piece that links social and emotional learning and trauma-informed practices means that we have to step back from thinking everything a child does wrong needs to be punished. They need to be educated. They need to learn how to take responsibility for how they've harmed others. They need to be held accountable to those others for the harm they've done. Now, caning a kid or sending them home for a couple of days or leaving them outside the classroom doesn't teach them anything except what they've done is wrong. We just don't teach them enough by doing that. So I think we want more. We want more from our school discipline. That's what we're discovering here. And I think if you want a school that is promoting social emotional learning and is promoting trauma-informed awareness, then you have to change the way you do discipline. So the old ways of discipline do not support trauma-informed practice or social emotional learning. They are counterproductive unless you change the school's way of solving problems. I hope that's clear. I'm just a little bit interested here in the last part of that question, which is how can schools tailor the restorative framework to accommodate diverse cultural contexts? Well, first of all, the cultural context is determined by the school values. So the values drive how we want schools to teach our kids. Now, if I come from a certain faith, right, or I come from a certain culture and I go to another school, then what we have to teach kids to do is to code switch. Now, what that means is they have to be able to learn how to read the demands of the place they're in without making home wrong or without making their original culture or their faith wrong. So the saying we use in this part of the world is, when you're at our school, this is what's important. It might be kindness. It might be courage. It might be excellence. It might be responsibility. But that's what's important here. We're not telling you what's important at home. We're not telling you you have to change home or change your faith. It's just that we want you to be able to see how the game is played at this school so you know the rules of engagement. So the best way to explain this to children really is to say, how many how many codes of football are there all over the world? Right? So in Australia, there are 5. So there's rugby union and rugby league and Australian football and touch and soccer. So young children understand that different sports have different rules. So this is in our school, this is the way we do things. So we're going to help you learn the skills to cope here at this school. And if you change schools, you're going to have to learn it all over again. Just the same way that if we're in a particular workplace or work in a school, if you work in the international sector, in international schools, you probably work in 3 or 4 different schools in your professional lifetime. But every time you change schools, you have to learn their rules and their values and their ways of doing things. So this is learning to adapt. So I think that is a life skill, which is very important. And I guess or did you want to interrupt, Lynn? Please stop me if I'm talking.
Yeah, thank you for your sharing. But I think our time is come to an
Okay.
end now. And there's several questions, and I believe that the questions related to the how we can like apply it in the different culture context is a huge one. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like a, a topic that needs to break down into the small um like angle or a
More
small
detail.
more detail. So we are now in the Classroom Circle fan page. We have the new series called Let's Talk. In that series, we try to answer the questions that we receive after each workshop. So there will be a place that everyone can continue and follow up with what we are sharing, what we discussing in our workshop. So yeah, hopefully that everyone will come and visit the fan page and like or send us the questions or more questions. So send the question directly to Margaret. I believe that to like strengthen and further our discussions based on what we are mentioned about today. So
And I'm very happy to, collect all your questions and spend some time answering them, but I'm afraid they're going to be in English. So I hope you can get onto Google Translate. So there we are. Thank you.
yeah, in our fan page, we have two versions, in English and in Vietnamese, and we are lovely to have a more supportive, more friends to join us to translate it into your own language. So this would become something that more easily for everyone to read and to share with other teacher, other educator in your country. So